They thought it was just another night on patrol, another man they could rough up and silence. But as the cameras rolled and the sirens screamed, the man they pinned to the ground said nothing. His calm eyes told a story louder than their shouts. A few hours later, when those same officers walked into court, their confidence vanished. Sitting behind the bench was the man they had beaten. Only now he wore the robe of justice. How does power feel when it suddenly changes hands? Before that night, Marcus Hill was just another man trying to make a quiet difference in a loud world. He was respected, calm, and deeply committed to justice. A judge known for fairness in a city that often forgot what fairness meant. Each morning, he left home with a soft smile and a briefcase full of case files, never flaunting his authority, never expecting special treatment. To the people in his courtroom, he was Your Honor. But outside, on the dimly lit streets of the same city he served, he was just a black man driving home after a long day. That night, as rain tapped against his windshield, Marcus thought about an upcoming trial, one involving allegations of misconduct against local officers. He didn't know those same officers were on duty nearby. The flashing blue lights that appeared in his rearview mirror didn't frighten him at first. He believed in the law. He believed in justice. But belief can be a fragile thing when met with fear and prejudice. As the patrol car pulled closer, Marcus reached for his license. Steady, polite, exactly as he had always advised young men in his courtroom to do. What he didn't know was that the moment he rolled down that window, his life, and theirs, was about to change forever. The rain fell harder as Marcus pulled to the side of the road, his headlights reflecting off the slick asphalt. Two officers stepped out of their cruiser, young, tense, and already on edge. Their hands hovered near their holsters, eyes sharp, assumptions sharper. Marcus rolled down his window halfway, his voice calm and respectful. "Evening, officers. Is there a problem?" But courtesy didn't matter. They saw his skin before they saw his face, heard his tone before they heard his words. One officer barked for him to get out of the car. Marcus complied, unarmed and composed. He'd spent years teaching others that cooperation saved lives. Yet tonight, that rule would betray him. The rain soaked through his coat as he placed his hands on the hood. The second officer circled the car, shining his flashlight into the back seat as if hunting for danger that wasn't there. Then came the first shove, small but deliberate. "Don't move!" one snapped. Marcus froze. The next moment, a hand gripped his shoulder, forcing him down. His briefcase fell open on the wet ground, papers scattering, his judge's ID visible under the streetlight. But they didn't look. They didn't care. When Marcus tried to speak, his words were drowned by thunder and authority. "Stop resisting!" they shouted, though he hadn't moved. A strike to his ribs, another to his back. Quick, practiced motions. He gasped for air, staring at the ID card inches away. The irony stung deeper than the pain. The very system he upheld was crushing him. The dashcam light blinked red. One officer hesitated, glancing toward it. "Camera's on," he whispered. The other ignored him, adrenaline and ego blurring judgment. Then, just as suddenly as it began, the chaos ended. Marcus lay still, his breath shallow, rainwater mixing with blood on the pavement. They cuffed him, lifted him roughly, and tossed him into the back seat, unaware that the man they called suspect was the same man who would soon judge their fate. As the car drove away, Marcus stared out the window, silent, but something in his eyes had changed. Not fear, not rage, just a calm promise that this night would not end the way they thought. The next morning, the courtroom buzzed with routine chatter. Lawyers flipping pages, officers adjusting their ties, unaware of the storm about to break. The two policemen from the night before stood by the defense table, nervous but defiant. They'd written their reports, rehearsed their story, confident that another routine stop would be buried like so many before it. Then the door opened. Silence rippled through the room. Every eye turned to the man walking in, calm, upright, dressed in his black robe. The gavel in his hand gleamed under the courtroom lights. The officers froze, their faces drained of color as recognition hit them like a gunshot. The man they'd beaten, humiliated, and handcuffed was now the one sitting on the bench, Judge Marcus Hill. For a moment, time itself seemed to stop. Marcus met their eyes not with vengeance, but with something heavier. Truth. His ribs still ached beneath his robe, but his voice was steady when he spoke the words that would redefine their lives. Court is now in session. The irony was suffocating. The same justice they had mocked now stared back at them in human form. One officer's hand trembled. The other looked away, shame burning through his skin. Every excuse they'd prepared died on their tongues. Marcus didn't need to raise his voice. His silence carried the weight of generations, of every man and woman who had stood powerless before bias, of every plea ignored and every truth silenced. In that moment, the courtroom was more than a room. It was a mirror. And as Marcus picked up the first report, the one describing his own resistance, the officers realized the truth. This wasn't just Judgment Day for them. It was justice catching up. When the trial concluded, the courtroom was silent, not out of respect, but out of reckoning. The two officers sat frozen, their badges stripped, their arrogance gone. Marcus didn't gloat. He didn't raise his voice or demand pity. He simply upheld the law the way he always had, with integrity, even toward those who had shown him none. His verdict wasn't just a sentence. It was a statement. He reminded the court that justice means nothing if it changes based on the color of one's skin. When power blinds compassion, he said quietly, law becomes cruelty, dressed in uniform. The officers were convicted of assault and misconduct, but their punishment wasn't what people remembered. It was the image, a black judge standing in dignity, representing the very justice system that once failed men like him. In the weeks that followed, the story spread nationwide. For some, it was a symbol of hope. For others, an uncomfortable truth too close to home. Marcus returned to his bench, but something within him had shifted. He now carried the weight of not just his own pain, but the unspoken stories of thousands who never got their day in court. And maybe that's what justice truly is. Not revenge, but revelation. Not shouting louder, but standing taller, because the real question isn't what those officers learned that day. It's what we, as a society, will do with the mirror they held up. Will we keep pretending not to see? Or will we finally confront the system that taught them to look at a man's skin before his soul?